Ethan walked across the strange valley with careful steps. The air was clear, the grass under his boots soft, and the mountains around him seemed endless. He had traveled far from his ship, drawn by a signal that no one could explain.
Ow!
He was alone, guided only by the sight of tall towers rising in the distance. They looked like castles from old Earth stories, built with stone and strength. He had seen many worlds, but nothing like this. He followed a narrow path until he reached a wide field. There he saw soldiers in silver armor, training with swords and shields. The sound of steel striking echoed across the open ground. They moved with discipline, strong and proud. Ethan stood still, watching them, unsure if he should step closer. Soon, one of the guards noticed him and called out. More soldiers turned to face him, forming a wall between him and the field beyond. From behind the soldiers came a woman. She wore the same silver armor, but hers was carved with fine detail, shaped to fit her form with grace. Her long hair flowed past her shoulders, catching the light of the sun. Her eyes were sharp, and her walk was steady, as if she had led armies all her life. Ethan realized she was not just a soldier, but their leader. She stopped in front of him, standing tall, her gaze fixed on his face. For a moment, Ethan forgot to breathe. He had trained to meet leaders, to speak with strength, but the sight of her left him with no words. He wanted to introduce himself, to explain why he had come, but the first thing that left his lips was not what he planned. Without thinking, he said softly, "You are beautiful." The field grew quiet. The soldiers shifted, some glancing at each other, waiting for her reply. She did not answer right away. Instead, she looked at him, her eyes searching, as if she wanted to know if he was mocking her. But Ethan's voice had been honest, and she saw it in his face. A small color rose to her cheeks. Her lips curved, not in anger, but in a smile she tried to hide. She had heard words of honor and loyalty from many, but not this. Her voice was calm when she spoke. "Say it again, human." Ethan blinked, unsure if he heard right. He stood in front of her, surrounded by her guards, and felt his heart race. He did not know why she wanted him to repeat it, but her tone carried no threat. It was softer, almost curious. He swallowed, but before he could answer, one of the older guards stepped forward, bowing his head. "My queen, should we take him away?" So she was the queen. Ethan's chest tightened. Had called a queen beautiful by mistake, and now he stood at her mercy. But she raised her hand, stopping her guard. Her eyes stayed on Ethan, waiting. He felt the weight of her gaze, and though his mind told him to stay silent, his heart pushed him to speak. He said again, steady this time, "You are beautiful." The queen's smile grew a little, her blush deeper than before. She turned from him, telling her guards to stand down. The soldiers lowered their weapons but kept their eyes on Ethan. She looked back at him once more. Studying the stranger who had walked into her land and spoken words no one dared to say. Ow. For the first time since she had worn her crown, she felt something she could not name, something new. And Ethan, though unsure what would come next, knew his life had just changed forever. The morning sun rose over the valley, casting light on the tall stone walls of the castle. Ethan was led through its gates by 2 guards. He did not fight them, nor did he feel fear. His mind was still on the queen, her face, her smile, and the way her cheeks had changed color. When he called her beautiful, stayed in his thoughts. He had not planned those words, yet they had opened a path that no map could guide him through. Inside the castle, the halls were filled with banners, armor stands, and the steady sound of footsteps. Servants moved quickly, carrying baskets of food, scrolls, and weapons. Everyone he passed looked at him with curiosity. He was not one of them, and they knew it. His clothing, his walk, even the way his eyes searched the walls marked him as a stranger. The guards brought him into a wide chamber. At the far end sat the queen on a carved wooden chair. The light from the high windows fell on her armor, making it shine brighter than the stone around her. She looked strong, calm, and patient. When Ethan stepped forward, she raised her hand, and the guards left the chamber. The room grew quiet. Only the sound of their breaths remained. The queen studied him for a long time. Her eyes were sharp, but there was a question in them too. At last she spoke. "You come from far away. Tell me why you are here." Ethan bowed his head. "I followed a signal. My ship picked it up, and I was sent to learn where it came from. I did not expect to find a kingdom, or you." Her lips curved slightly at his last words. "And yet you called me beautiful before you told me your name." Ethan felt heat rise to his own face. "It was a mistake," he said. The words escaped before I could stop them. She tilted her head, her smile small but real. "Sometimes mistakes are honest. Sometimes they reveal more than truth." He looked at her, unsure how to answer. She rose from her chair and stepped closer. The sound of her boots echoed in the chamber. She stood only a few steps away now, her eyes never leaving his. "I am queen of this land," she said. "Many call me by titles. Many kneel when they speak to me. But you did neither. You looked at me not as a ruler, but as a woman. That is rare." Ethan listened, his heart beating faster. He wanted to tell her more, but he feared his words would not be enough. She must have seen his struggle, because she softened her voice. "Tell me, Ethan, do you still think the same? Or was it only the heat of the moment?" He did not look away. "I meant it," he said. "You are beautiful." The silence stretched between them. For a moment she looked at him as if she wanted to speak again, but she turned back toward her chair. "You're bold," she said, her tone steady once more. "But boldness is not always weakness." She sat down and rested her hands on the arms of the chair. "You will stay in this castle until I decide what is to be done with you." Ethan nodded. He did not resist. A guard entered and led him away, not to a cell, but to a small chamber with a window that looked out over the valley. The room was plain but warm, with a bed, a table, and water in a silver cup. He sat by the window and watched the fields beyond the walls. Thought of her again, of the way she asked him to say the words a second time. He knew now it had not been anger in her voice. It had been something else. As night fell, the castle lights glowed like stars across the stone towers. Ethan lay awake, wondering what the queen thought of him, and what would happen when the sun rose again. Days passed in the castle, and Ethan was no longer treated as a stranger. He walked the courtyards, watched the soldiers train, and learned the ways of the people. Though many looked at him with caution, they began to see that he meant no harm. He was curious, asking questions about their customs, their battles, and their dreams. And in truth, his thoughts always returned to the queen. Claire remained a mystery to him. She ruled with strength. But Ethan saw something else in her eyes when she looked at him. She spoke to him at times during the evenings, asking about his world, told her about the blue oceans of Earth, the wide deserts, the cities that touched the sky. She listened with great care, as if each word carried a new truth. In return, she told him of her people, their honor, their struggles, and the weight of her crown. Ethan listened, not as an outsider, but as someone who wanted to understand. One afternoon, she invited him to ride with her beyond the walls. Horses were brought to the courtyard, strong and proud beasts. Ethan had ridden before, though not often. He climbed into the saddle, and they set out across the fields. The air was fresh, the wind sharp, and the mountains stood tall in the distance. For a while, neither spoke. They simply rode side by side, the silence between them filled with something unspoken. At last, Claire slowed her horse and looked at him. "Do you regret your words?" Her voice was calm, but her eyes searched him carefully. Ethan met her gaze. "No, I meant them. I will always mean them." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. She turned away, looking across the valley. "Many men have stood before me, Ethan. They swore to fight, to serve, to die for me. But you spoke with no oath, no promise, only a truth. That is why your words stayed with me." He felt a warmth spread in his chest. It was not only her beauty that moved him, but her courage, her honesty, and her strength. He wanted to tell her more, but before he could, the sound of hooves echoed in the distance. A group of knights rode toward them, their banners flying. They halted and bowed to their queen, their eyes shifting to Ethan with suspicion. One of the knights spoke. "My queen, there are whispers in the court. They say the stranger seeks to win your favor. They say he is dangerous." Claire's face hardened. She straightened in her saddle. "He is my guest. He has done no harm. Speak no more of this." The knights obeyed, though unease lingered in their eyes. They turned their horses and rode back toward the castle. Ethan watched them leave, then looked at Claire. "I do not wish to cause trouble for you." She shook her head. "The court is full of voices. They fear what they do not know. You are not one of them, so they speak against you. But I do not fear you. Ethan's heart quickened at her words. Why not? She looked at him, her eyes steady. Because I've seen your heart. It is not the heart of a liar or a traitor. It is the heart of a man who speaks truth even when he does not plan to. The ride back to the castle was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet. It carried trust. When they returned, Claire walked with him through the gardens. Now, the flowers were in bloom, their colors bright against the stone paths. She stopped by a fountain, the water shining in the light. She turned to him once more. Ethan, she said softly, you changed something in me when you spoke those words. I do not know what will come of it, but I cannot forget it. He stepped closer, careful not to break the moment. Nor can I, he said. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat the world around them seemed to fade. The soldiers, the court, the crown, even the stars above, none of it mattered. Only the two of them stood there, bound by a truth that could not be undone. The days of calm did not last. Whispers turned to threats, and soon the court was filled with voices that spoke against Ethan. The lords feared. He had come to take the queen's heart and weaken her rule. Some claimed he was a spy sent to learn their secrets. Others said no stranger should walk so freely in the castle. Ethan felt the weight of their stares as he passed through the halls, but he held his head high. He had nothing to hide. Claire knew of the unrest. She stood in her chamber, staring out the window as the banners below shifted in the wind. Ethan joined her, his steps quiet on the stone floor. She did not turn when he came near. They do not trust you, she said. They never will. Ethan paused. And you? Do you trust me? She turned then, her eyes firm.
I do.
Those words gave him strength, yet he could see the weight they carried on her shoulders. He reached for her hand, but stopped short, unsure if it was his place, she noticed, and her lips curved in the smallest smile. You are bold, Ethan, but boldness may be what I need. That night the castle guards lit more torches than usual. Rumors spread of a rival lord, gathering an army to march on the valley. The kingdom had known peace for years, but old wounds had not healed. Claire gathered her council and spoke of defense, of armies, of standing firm. Ethan listened from the edge of the chamber. When the council ended, she walked to him and spoke quietly. When the battle comes, I cannot fight alone. Will you stand with me? Ethan did not hesitate. Yes, I will. The next day the army rode out. The queen at the front, her silver armor shining in the sun, her banner flying high. Ethan rode beside her, his weapon heavy in his hands, his heart steady. The valley fields that had once seemed so peaceful now shook with the thunder of hooves and the clash of steel. The rival lord's men charged with fury, their cries filling the air. The queen raised her sword, and her army met them head-on. Ethan fought as he had never fought before. Each strike, each step, was for her. The clash of swords rang in his ears, the sting of battle filled his body, but he did not falter. Through the chaos he saw her, leading her men with courage, her voice carrying over the field. She was more than a queen in that moment. She was a force, unbroken and unyielding, yet even the strongest can stumble. Surrounded by enemies, Claire's horse was struck, and she fell to the ground. Soldiers rushed toward her, blades raised. Ethan saw and felt his heart leap. He pushed through the fight, his weapon striking aside those who blocked his path. He reached her just as the enemy closed in. With a roar, he fought them back, standing over her, guarding her with his life. His arms ached, his breath burned, but he did not stop. Claire rose beside him, her sword flashing. Together they fought as one, their movements flowing like water, their strength doubled.
Oh.
The soldiers around them fell back, their courage broken. Side by side, they pushed forward until the enemy line shattered. Their army, inspired by their queen and the stranger who stood with her, surged forward and drove the enemy from the field. When the battle ended, the valley was silent save for the wind. The ground was marked with the scars of war, but the kingdom still stood. Ethan stood with his chest heaving, his sword stained, his eyes searching only for her. Claire lowered her weapon and looked at him. Dirt and blood covered her, yet her smile broke through it all. You stood with me, she said, her voice soft but strong. Ethan met her gaze, his voice steady, though his body shook. I told you I would. She stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm. And again, you proved your words true. The soldiers cheered their queen, their voices echoing across the valley. But for Ethan and Claire, the sound faded into the distance. In that moment, there was only the two of them, bound by trust, by battle, and by the truth spoken long ago in a quiet field. The days after the battle were filled with work. The fields had to be cleared, the wounded cared for, and the people reassured. Ethan walked among the soldiers and villagers, helping where he could. Though he was still a stranger, many now looked at him with respect. They had seen him fight beside their queen, and they could not forget it. Some even bowed their heads when he passed, though he never asked for such honor. Inside the castle, the queen sat with her council. The rival lord had fled, his forces scattered. For now, peace had returned. Yet the council spoke of rebuilding, of alliances, of guarding against the next threat. Claire listened, gave her orders, and carried her crown with the same strength as always. But when the council ended and the hall emptied, she often found herself seeking Ethan. He was not of her people, but he had stood by her when it mattered most. One evening she called for him to join her in the gardens. The air was cool, the sky painted with fading light, and the sound of water flowed from the fountain. Ethan stepped carefully along the stone path until he reached her. She stood by the roses, her armor set aside, wearing only a simple cloak. Without the crown and steel, she looked almost like any woman, but to Ethan, she was still more than anyone he had ever known. She turned to him, her eyes calm but steady. "You came from the stars," she said. "Could have left after the battle. You could return to your ship and your world. Yet you remain here. Why?" Ethan held her gaze. "Because I made a choice. When I saw you fall in battle, I knew I could not leave you. Not then, not now. My place is here, if you will have it." Her breath caught for a moment, but she did not look away. She stepped closer, her cloak brushing against him. "When you first came, you spoke words no one else dared. You called me beautiful. I thought it a mistake, but now I see it was more than that. Those words changed me." Ethan felt the same warmth in his chest as he had that first day. "They were true then," he said. "They are true now. You are beautiful, Claire." For the first time she did not hide the color that rose to her cheeks. She let the smile come freely, soft and bright. "Say it again, Ethan," she whispered. He did, without fear, without pause. "You are beautiful." Her hand touched his, gentle yet sure. In that moment the walls of duty and crown seemed to fade. She was still the queen, but she was also a woman who had found someone willing to see her beyond her title. Ethan did not need her crown to respect her, nor her throne to stand by her. He needed only the truth that bound them. Days turned to weeks, and the story spread through the land. The people whispered of the stranger who came from far away and stood with their queen. Some doubted at first, but many believed. They sang songs of the battle of the queen who led with courage, and of the man who fought at her side. The tale grew, carried from village to village until it reached beyond the valley. One night, as the stars stretched bright across the sky, Ethan and Claire stood on the castle balcony. The land below them was quiet, at peace. She rested her hand on the stone rail, her gaze on the horizon. "The world will always test us," she said. "There will always be those who stand against us." Ethan nodded. "Then we face them together." She turned, her eyes shining in the starlight. "Together." He reached for her hand, and this time she did not hesitate. They stood in silence, the night wind carrying their unspoken vows. A single mistake, a single word spoken without thought, had begun it all. Yet now it was no mistake. It was the truth that joined their worlds and bound their hearts. And when he whispered once more, "You are beautiful," she still smiled, still blushed, and still asked him to say it again.